Seeing as my previous video was about a movie I really enjoyed, I figured I should probably analyze a movie that I had the exact opposite reaction to. I remember having a ton of problems with this movie, and since the sequel has come out now, I'm curious as to whether my issues with the first movie will be addressed or exacerbated. I haven't heard my specific issues with Guardians of the Galaxy brought up much, so I figured I would just make this video so that I could talk about all the things I did and didn't like, and point to this video whenever someone asked me why I didn't like the movie. I also, when I started making this video, hadn't watched the movie since it first came out, and I don't remember much of it, so it's possible my reaction to this movie could have changed since then. But somehow, I'm skeptical. Before I get into what I don't like, however, let me bring up the few things I remember liking about the movie. The costumes and the makeup for the movie are really good and really interesting. The movie's got a good balance of practical makeup and CG, and in that sense, they didn't take a lot of shortcuts. Related to this, the CG in general for this movie is really good, and rarely is it distractingly bad for a movie that uses it so heavily. The production and set design is great. A smaller detail is that the arrow that Michael Rooker uses is alluded to visually throughout the movie, and when its abilities are shown, it feels really cathartic. They utilized it visually, so it feels better for a movie. The other thing is, I'm sorry, that's it. Those are like the only things I enjoy about the movie. I don't mean to sound harsh, but why do I care? Why do I care that his mother is dying? We haven't shown them together at all. She doesn't have any character traits other than mom-isms and cancer. There's no reason at all to care that she's dying right now, other than that she's his mother. There's no inherent reason to feel sad here, and it comes off as a cheap attempt by the filmmakers to elicit some sort of emotional reaction from audience members who have known people with cancer without actually having to put any effort into showing the relationship or actually making her a character. It seems really manipulative.
No! 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 No!
It's me.
No!
No! He's yelling loudly, therefore he's emoting. Okay, why the hell is nobody watching this kid right now? When my mom died when I was 5, the last thing I was alone. If anything, I was too surrounded by people. Maybe the grandpa's a drunk. Also, what are the odds that his mom would die and he would get abducted within 20 minutes? Talk about a cosmic coincidence. Supposedly, that intro scene was added into the movie during reshoots. If the movie had started with this scene and cut that part out, it would have at least gained some sort of credit for treating the audience with intelligence and trusting them to figure out what the mix is, and it seems like it's shot that way, but alas, no. Wait, I thought we were supposed to relate to this character the most. He's the only Earthling in the main cast, right? So theoretically we should relate to him the most? But in his first scene, he's kicking these little rodent things. I suppose they're analogous to rats, and I don't like rats, but even still, if I saw somebody kicking them during the first time I met them, I'd think they were being unnecessarily cruel.
Star-Lord. Who?
The first legitimate piece of characterization in the entire movie is immediately undercut by being the punchline of a joke. This is a consistent problem I remember having throughout this movie. It comes off as a drunk frat boy afraid of showing any emotion or taking anything seriously. So when he says, "Hey bro, thanks for always being there for me," and you go, "Hey man, no problem," he responds with, "Ha, just kidding, what are you, gay?" It's so disingenuous, it's so spiteful and anti making the audience actually care about something. I really hate this, I'm going to call it a plot device, of the awesome mix. I really hate it. It's perfectly fine if James Gunn wanted to use whatever music he wanted, it's his movie, but why did he feel the need to create a contrived, shitty, cheap, lazy plot device in order to justify it? Maybe it was supposed to be something that Star-Lord feels connected to, the last piece of his homeworld, or something like that, and that could be really beautiful, but it doesn't come off that way. It comes off as almost like product placement, like, oh, we're playing this song, we don't trust the audience to be able to figure out where it's coming from, so we're just gonna make this stupid shit up. Do you think the audience believes that there's an orchestra just out of frame every time there's an orchestral score in a movie? Just play the music, man. You don't have to create such a shitty writing device to make it clear where the music's coming from. The audience is smart, we can figure that out. Besides that, an even more insulting aspect of the awesome mix is that it's so boring. There's nothing eclectic or interesting on it, there's no underground artist, it's literally like the production team looked up most popular songs before 1988 and made it into the awesome mix. It has no flavor, no spice, it's just generically popular music. It seems like they didn't have any message behind any of the song choices. It's another thing about the movie that just seems so callously manipulative and inauthentic.
Cruising down the street in my 6'4", jocking the bitches, slapping the hoes. I wanna love you.
Exposition via newscast, the lazy writer's favorite crutch. By the way, does this seem like a guy who would be listening to the news a lot? Why would the news be playing in his ship?
Ravagers. We got a code.
Yeah, and that code is steal from everybody.
When I picked you up on Terra, these boys of mine wanted to eat you.
Yeah?
They ain't never tasted any Terran before. I stopped them. You're alive causing me.
This is the filmmakers saying to the audience, we don't trust you based on the information we've shown to be able to figure out what kind of character this person is, so we're just gonna tell you, oh, and we're gonna tell you these two characters' relationship in a really unrealistic and dumb way. It's like in movies when a character walks in and says, hey, character, first name, character, last name. It's dumb and it's pandering and assumes the audience is dumb.
Quill. As soon as we get him back here, I'm gonna kill him myself.
Why does Michael Rooker want to kill Chris Pratt now? Like, they've known each other for 26 years? What did he do all of a sudden to make Michael Rooker want to kill him? Was the orb supposed to be the final straw? Because that didn't at all seem like a tense, relationship-breaking confrontation.
His prize.
I'm a daughter of Thanos, just like you.
Exposition via unrealistic, stilted dialogue, everyone's favorite. We are both his daughters. We are sisters.
You believe they call us?
Who is Bradley Cooper talking to? Does Groot understand him? He's clearly not talking to any person, he's just sort of saying things out loud to himself. Or is this just another lazy way to inform us of somebody's character? Just having them talk aloud to themselves? You'd think someone who works a lot in this line of work would want to avoid the details of their exploits as much as possible, because they might tell the salesman something they didn't want to hear. Do you think people who sell illegal furs discuss all the trouble the poachers had to go through to kill the animal and avoid the police? This doesn't at all make sense for this type of character.
Kree fanatic, outraged by the peace treaty, who will not rest until Xandarian culture, my culture, is wiped from existence.
Come on there.
Hey audience, in case you're not smart enough to understand what's going on, I'm gonna explain it to you. This movie might have the lowest opinion of its audience's intelligence I have ever seen. Also, Chris Pratt must be really stupid to not know who Lee Pace is, considering he had the news on earlier, and he lives and works in the civilized systems. It'd be like an American mercenary that works in the Middle East going, what's ISIS? I've never heard of that.
I live for the simple things. Like how much this is gonna hurt.
I'm not going to talk about how badly that action scene was shot or edited, giving you no sense of geography or spatial relationships. I'm not going to talk about that. But why does this raccoon always make remarks aloud to himself? Why? This may be a character trait, but it's a really fucking stupid and annoying one.
It'll grow back, you dashed idiot. Quit whining.
Oh great, another example of tell don't show. You could have just cut this line and instead shown a shot of a bit of the vines for the arms starting to grow back and reform themselves. I mean, because it's a movie and it's visual, and that's what you're supposed to do for movies.
I picked this guy up a while back for petty thefts. He's got a code name.
Hey audience, I'm going to tell you more about this character instead of showing you visually. Who cares if it's a movie in a visual medium?
Saying that they condemn his actions. He is slaughtering children, families.
You know what would have been more impactful than having someone say, he's killing children? Showing it, or implying it, have him lift up his weird hammer thing in front of a group of kids and cut to him wiping something off the end of his hammer, or somehow show it visually because it's a movie and not a radio play.
I've escaped 22 prisons. This one's no different. You're lucky the broad showed up, because otherwise me and Groot would be collecting that bounty right now, and you'd be getting drawn and quartered by Yondu and those Ravagers.
I've had a lot of folks try to kill me over the years. I ain't about to be brought down by a tree and a talking raccoon. Old?
Let's have an I'm gonna explain my character off. This is so realistic. I'm being a bit facetious, but there could be a way to easily rewrite this dialogue to be more natural, especially considering that they're in jail together, so they'd probably have to talk naturally eventually anyway. Have you seen The Shawshank Redemption? It might not be easy to find a clever way to have this interaction, but if you wanted things easy, you probably shouldn't be a filmmaker.
So his vocabularistics is limited to I and am and Groot.
Do you really think that the audience wouldn't be able to figure this out, James Gunn? Did you really not expect anyone to be able to understand that that's all he can say without the explanation? Are we supposed to find this funny? This is supposed to be our main character, right? The character we relate to. Are we supposed to find him being abused funny? Wait, what? How did this happen? I thought the entire movie we've been told, I mean literally told, that she's supposed to be this super badass fighter babe, but they're not going to show how she got captured. Oh, we're just supposed to believe it because it's convenient for the movie despite what it's already done, right?
Here, Drax. The Destroyer.
You know why they call me this.
You've slayed dozens of Ronan's minions.
I know who you are. I'm gonna explain to the audience who you are. Then you can explain yourself too. Fuck visuals. Seriously, if you close your eyes, 75% of this movie would be exactly the same. Dialogue is sometimes necessary for some specific scenes and some specific information, but as a filmmaker, you should challenge yourself and go out of your way in trying to use visual information to show the audience things instead of having your characters say them. Remember, kids, if you can't shoot or edit or choreograph fight scenes well, just bombard the audience with a ton of quick cutting and pulsing flashing lights. I'm sure they won't notice.
He turned off the artificial gravity everywhere but in here.
The audience won't get this unless we explain it. Better explain it.
Oh, she has no idea. If I had a black light, the place would look like a Jackson Pollock painting.
How does this joke make sense? Like, first of all, why does he assume that the other non-Earthlings know who Jackson Pollock is? Second of all, how does he know who Jackson Pollock is? He was like 8 when he got abducted, right? Was he really into art history when he was 7? Maybe there's some space library where he can look at Earth's history so he feels connected to it. Maybe Jackson Pollock was actually an alien and that's why the others could know who he is. Maybe it's a cheap, lazy joke that they thought was permissible because references are always funny.
The high-end community is it's a tight-knit.
Huh. It's funny and because he's interrupting him. This scene is super necessary and totally not included just because the director's brother wanted to be in the movie more. Character trait out of nowhere and never alluded to before. I'm glad we're still developing these characters 50 minutes into the movie.
When Thanos took my home world, he killed my parents in front of me.
Hey, you know what would have been more impactful than having a character say this? Showing it. Because this is a movie, and a great director uses film to its fullest potential by using it as a visual medium instead of a dialogue-based one. Dialogue exists in every form of media, so do something only film can do. Are we supposed to genuinely feel for this stupid fucking raccoon? The entire movie, he hasn't shown one redeemable characteristic. He hasn't done anything morally good. This comes out of nowhere. It's completely uncharacteristic of the character thus far. And, again, just comes across as something super shallow that the filmmakers are abusing to elicit some sort of emotional reaction without actually having to show us or build to anything previous to this. It's funny because he dropped it. Oh, that's rich humor. I am not debating that Benicio del Toro would want to explain what the orb is. He's a collector, so presumably he's someone who's interested in history. It totally makes sense for his character to want to explain stuff like that, and for him to have that knowledge. But it would have been nice to see maybe somebody in the main cast looking at something in his collection, and then Benicio goes off on a tangent about the history of that object in the scene preceding this, so that it doesn't come off as yet another overly expository dialogue scene, and it's a bit more natural.
Go and destroy him.
You called Ronan?
First of all, again, did you really think the audience wouldn't have been able to understand that that's what happened without this piece of dialogue? Second of all, what the hell kind of assumption is that to make on Chris Pratt's part? Is that a logical conclusion? Like, at all? The score is so bland and uninteresting. I know music is subjective, but it should be used to improve the scene or provide something different. You could take this music out and the scene would feel entirely the same. I can think of 5 different pieces of music that could improve this, and the sequence is shot fine, so I don't understand why they insist on using this generic nonsense.
Fly me to the moon, let me play among the stars, and let me see what spring is like on Jupiter and Mars. In other words, hold
character trait that appears out of nowhere and has never been hinted at this entire movie. Glad we're still developing these characters an hour and 7 minutes into the movie.
You'll die in seconds!
You said that literally 30 seconds ago, and even if you didn't, we would still understand the conflict. Do the filmmakers really not trust the audience at all?
I don't know what came over me, but I couldn't let you die. I found something inside of myself. Something incredibly heroic.
This movie keeps doing this thing where any serious character moment is immediately interrupted by a joke. Why do the filmmakers feel the need to do this? Are they afraid of trying?
All the anger, all the rage. It's just to cover my loss.
Oh, boo-hoo!
Remember that thing I just said? Yeah, that again.
Save them? How?
I am Groot.
The reason this writing device works for Chewbacca is that a lot of the time it feels conversational. Chewie goes, "Rrr," and Han Solo says, "Yeah, you can say that again." But this doesn't work in Guardians of the Galaxy. Nobody responds to something by including the entire previous statement unless they're taking a test, or they're in a job interview, or they're in The Lobster.
Leave him alone! When I picked you up as a kid, these boys wanted to eat you.
Maybe this is supposed to come off as repetitive, but it's still just as annoying. It's still treating the audience like they're stupid by explaining something to them, and it's still not using cinema as a visual medium. It's using cinema as a radio play. Wait. Where's this music coming from? I don't know. Oh, okay. They got that. Good thing I saw that. Otherwise, I wouldn't have figured it out. I'm not smart enough. Sure, why not? Who cares about logic or consistency? Just have the characters pull magic nonsense out of everywhere constantly. That really adds to make things full of stakes.
The time has come to rejoice and renounce your paltry gods. Your salvation is at hand. Isalka! Yeah!
Child, things are gonna get easier.
Oh, were you actually feeling a sense of dread? Fuck you, audience! Here's a joke instead! It's not cool to care about anything!
Take my hand, Peter.
Oh my god! We would have understood the repetition without the stupid hallucination. We would get it. We're not dumb.
He's gonna be so pissed when he realizes I switched out the orb on him.
Why is this revealed through dialogue? All you had to do was show Chris Pratt showing the sphere to Zoe Saldana and we'd understand, oh, Michael Rooker must have a decoy. And then when we see the troll doll later, it's like, oh, I get it, that's funny. Show, don't tell, James Gunn. It's like the thing they teach you on the first fucking day of film school. You must not have shown up.
Anomaly in your nervous system, so we had it checked out.
So this dude went 26 years without knowing his parentage. I'm not saying that's impossible. My brother is never going to know the identity of his biological father. But if it radically changes your nervous system to the point where a simple physical can determine whether or not you're full human, I feel like you'd know. Did he never go to a doctor in the last 26 years? Did he ever take a blood test? No, we're just going to pretend like this is fine, even though it's apparently incredibly obvious based on the physiology alone? Okay. You know what? I'll admit that this is one emotional beat in the movie that works well because it's not undercut immediately by a joke and because it provides new insight into something we've seen the whole movie. It doesn't come out of nowhere, so it's impactful. Now, for the next movie, just do that for, like, the rest of the shit in the movie. Like, all the bullshit, all the terrible stuff. Just do that for the rest of that. This 3-minute section is more emotional, more visual, more interesting, better acted, and flows better than the entire rest of the movie combined. Why? Why is the sequence so good when the rest is so shit? What happened? What happened, James Gunn? Okay, so now that I've talked about some specific things I don't like about the movie, I like to connect them into some overarching ideas and the fundamental problems of the movie. The number one problem this movie has is in the writing department. This is one of the worst written movies financed by a major studio ever made. Now, film, entertainment, art is all subjective, but I'm going to outline a couple reasons why this would be considered bad. If a movie has a lower budget, I tend to be more forgiving when it comes to writing. I get it, you don't have the budget to show us something, so you just sort of tell us, it's fine if your movie costs $3 million. But this movie costs $223 million. It's in the top 10 most expensive movies ever made, so these issues are completely unacceptable. Number 1 is it's not visual enough. I said this in the Batman and Superman video, and I'll say it again. Film is a visual medium. The term for movies used to be motion pictures. This movie seems like it's trying its best not to use visuals. So much of the information is just flat out told through dialogue. Dialogue isn't visual, it's not cinematic. There are certain things that can only be done through dialogue, but as a filmmaker, one of your main goals should be to provide information through the image and not the dialogue. That's what makes film unique as an art form, so use it. Dialogue is in novels, in radio, TV show, magazines, newspaper. It's all around us every day, every time we walk on the street or take the light rail. And just telling us the information instead of showing it to us is far less impactful in a medium that is designed to be visual. It's lazy and cheap and bad filmmaking to just tell us everything or most of the information that we need to learn. Aside from that, it's actively insulting to the audience because it's one, not trusting them with the intelligence to be able to understand context clues to decipher whatever the implication of the visuals are, and two, it's not treating them to a cinematic experience, it's treating them to a radio play experience. Number 2, related to this is the redundant dialogue. A lot of movies have this where something visual will happen and a character will say something that's kind of redundant because you've just seen it. For example, a woman has a police badge on a necklace like she's undercover and she hides it before walking into a bar. Then when she orders a drink, some guy sits next to her and he's like, "Hey, sweet cheek," and she says, "I'm a cop." Well, yeah, we got that. We saw the badge before, but you're telling us anyways. A lot of movies do this, and a lot of great movies do this even, but it's typically minimal. This movie, because almost every piece of information is told to the audience through dialogue, is compounded by this redundant dialogue in a ton of places. It's completely insulting to the audience's intelligence. Like, oh, you clearly didn't see what just happened, so we're gonna tell you so you don't forget. We've seen movies before, we know that we should pay attention to what's happening on screen. Number 3. This is something far more subjective, but this movie is so emotionally manipulative. Feel sad, his mom has cancer. Feel sad, he's a raccoon who's alone. Feel sad, his wife and daughter were killed. Again, if these things had been shown visually, then this would have worked better. But these wannabe emotional moments come out of nowhere and aren't alluded to. They aren't really developed or handled in any way that feels authentic or realistic or like the filmmakers care enough to actually treat you with respect by spending some part of the running time towards building this emotional moment before it happens. Maybe the whole raccoon being alone thing would have worked better if there was a scene, I don't know, he's at a public place and he sees aliens of a specific type talking to each other, and he looks around and he's alone at a table, and because Groot's in the bathroom, and you get the sense that maybe he feels alone because all the aliens are talking to their type of people, and he doesn't have a type of people. He doesn't have anybody he can talk to. He doesn't know any of the raccoons. Sure, it's cliche and simple, but it's some sort of development of some kind. It doesn't rely 100% on dialogue. My other major problem with this movie is the characters. I don't like nor relate to any of the main characters, which is fine for me. There's not a ton of main characters in any movie that I like. But these are like cartoon characters. Groot just says 3 words the whole movie. He isn't well-rounded as a character. Rocket Raccoon is just saying quips aloud to himself the whole movie. It's annoying. Drax is fine. He actually has an arc in that he's different at the end of the movie than he was at the beginning because of things that happen in the movie, and it's clearly demonstrated how he evolves. He makes a decision, he regrets it, he grows as a person. That's more than I can say for any other character who just sort of jolt from being one type of character to another without any remotely realistic transition or reason. Quill is a douchebag. I don't find anything redeemable about his character except maybe the ending, but the only development he has, and I use that word loosely, comes out of nowhere. And I'm not even sure that it's a consistent transition. Like, I don't know that the selfless decisions he made, those that seem to defy his character as presented thus far, are decisions he would make after the end of this movie. Fundamentally, it's the same character at the end than it is at the beginning. Oh, I haven't talked about Zoe Saldana yet. Zoe Saldana is also in the movie for some reason. Other than these major complaints, there isn't anything egregiously bad about the movie. It's just bland. The score is bland, the cinematography is mostly bland, the acting is fine, nobody's great, nobody's bad, except for that stupid kid at the beginning, which is kind of surprising because there are a lot of good actors in the movie, but nobody really seems like they give their character a second thought or a backstory or a reasoning behind their decisions. Its blandness is almost more offensive. There are movies I don't like, but it's because they made decisions that I disagree with, and I respect that they have the conviction to make decisions that I might not agree with. This movie isn't that. It's formulaic, it's predictable, it takes no risks, it's trying desperately to be broad appealing, it's inoffensive to a fault, and all of these mean that it's boring. I don't think a movie based on Guardians of the Galaxy would necessarily be bad, so I'm still holding out that number 2 could actually be somewhat good. I haven't seen it. But like I said, I'm skeptical. Go ahead and subscribe if you like this video and want to see more of these types of videos. Or don't. It's your life. Do what you want.